you have water too. I've got a
Okay.
water there for if you need one.
Thank you.
Feeding? Good. All right. Anything you need, Kara? You're good?
I'm good.
You ready to rock?
Yeah.
Thank you for being on time. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
It's so fantastic.
I was like, oh shit, I was pushing it a little, but I made it.
You're perfect. You're perfect. Okay. All right. Ready? And tell us who you are.
My name is Kara Goucher. I'm a mom, a wife, a two-time Olympian, an advocate for clean sport and women's equality in sport, and a runner, lifelong runner.
That's an understatement. A brilliant runner. So how did you meet your husband, Adam?
I first met Adam at a high school cross-country national championship when I was a sophomore and he was a senior. There were absolutely no sparks, but that's the first time I met him. And then I came to the University of Colorado a couple years after him, and we became friends there. And once he graduated, he became a volunteer assistant coach, and so we just started hanging out more and more, and we've been married 20 years now.
Great partnership. I think the thing I've learned from the elite athletes like yourself is that those that have found a partner that they can it really makes a big difference, particularly for folks like you that are runners. You're on an island. You don't have anybody to help you or talk to you through the challenges of the mental challenges and the injuries that inevitably come.
Yeah, it's a complicated lifestyle, and it's a lot of sacrifice, and it's kind of like a weird lifestyle, right? Like you can't go out, you don't see your family very often, you don't go on vacation, and so to have someone who's in the thick of it with you, I mean, for sure it helped my career to have my best friend there all the time, and there were times where it was challenging because one of us was running well and one of us wasn't, or one of us was healthy and one of us wasn't, but overall, you live out of a suitcase a lot of the time. You're traveling around Europe, and to have your security blanket there the whole time, it was really helpful.
So when did you know that you wanted to make running your career, Kara?
I always dreamt of becoming an Olympian. It shifted sports when I was younger. Like I always wanted to be a gymnastics Olympian, but I had like zero skill. And then I thought maybe I could make it in tennis, but again, zero skill. I think I started running really young, running with my grandpa, and then I started racing regularly in the 7th grade. And I mean, I remember watching the 92 Olympics and watching Lynn Jennings win bronze and being like, wow, I mean, like, I wonder if that could be me. But I didn't realize A, how hard it would be, B, how long it would take, and C, that there was even an opportunity I didn't realize that could be your job, right? I just thought it was like you were a teacher and then you also ran on the side. I had no idea that you could actually make a living being an athlete as a professional runner until years later when I was, halfway through college.
So that transition has been the runners that I've been talking to, the most difficult transition that I've seen is that transition from, or at least I've heard about, is the transition from high school, an acclaimed high school athlete to college, to make that transition because what was your coaching like in high school?
I had the best high school coach. We only ran 5 or 6 days a week. Our mileage was super low. We had a really good team. The focus was always on team. I was obviously successful individually, but my coach really made it all about team, team, team. And, he was like an old shot putter from his day, but he could still see that there was a future for me. And so I couldn't have come from a better high school experience where it was super low mileage. It was all about friendships and pushing each other and being there for your teammates. But that did make going to college a really hard transition because I showed up at CU where it's like hardcore. The women had been second at the national championships the year before, and it was, training 7 days a week. Everyone had trained all summer except for me. It was just very, very, very different, and it was tough. I got injured right away.
So do you know what the injury, can you attribute your injury? Was it like a stress fracture or that typically seems to be the issue that over and over and over again?
Yeah, I got a stress fracture my freshman year right before the national championships in cross country. And I think it was a couple of things, like not only did I bump up my mileage to 45, 50 miles a week at the time, which is like so crazy now because I still run that now and I think it's so low, but I bumped my mileage up, but also the intensity was just so intense. And I know I'm like a super calm person, but I'm insanely competitive. And so every day I would be trying to keep up with the seniors and I'd be trying to keep up with all the best women on the team. And so I was never really recovering. So not only was the intensity of what I was doing shot through the roof, but my mileage, went up quite a bit. And my body was like, fuck you, and it broke down. I got a stress fracture.
So, and of course the big change and I think hopefully as we move from the origins of Title IX to where we are today, a lot of the science and the nutrition and the doctors that have been more attuned to women's needs. Did you have that sort of support group here at CU? I mean, this is an elite program, obviously one of the top 3 in the country since you've been here and now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved my coach. I loved the team. I think we had a nutritionist that would come talk to us maybe like at the beginning of the year, but we weren't like working on our bodies. I wasn't being told anything about like recovery or hydration or anything like that. It was just like we had practice at 8 o'clock on Sundays, which was designed to prevent people from partying. And I mean, I would just roll out of bed and go straight to the bus or the van and hammer 15 miles. I wouldn't even half the time have water with me for afterwards. I mean, nothing was being done how it should be. And I just was a lack of education at that point. It wasn't like our coach was trying to make us hardcore. It was just like, that's just what we did. And looking back, I'm like, oh my God, it could have been so much better if I had actually treated my body well. But I just didn't know any better.
Well, no, I don't think people were paying the proper attention to this women's sports the way they should be.
Right. I mean, even now it's funny because I returned to Colorado for the very end of my career, and I returned to my college coach. And the first long run I did, he was driving around giving me fluids, and I was like, what is this? Like I used to hammer 15 miles, 16 miles without a sip of water. So I think it's evolved, people are learning, but certainly back, in 1996, we weren't doing that.
So getting to Colorado, how heavily recruited were you? And as part of that process, did you look at other programs and sort of say, that might not be a good fit for me, or I'm not sure about the culture in that environment?
Yeah, so my story is a little different. I was not heavily recruited. I made it to Foot Locker National Championships, which is this high school national championships, my sophomore and junior year. But I actually got my period right after the national championships and slowed down a ton my junior year. And so after you finish your junior year, colleges can start reaching out to you. So at first there was like lots of colleges, dozens and dozens of coaches calling. But as my senior season started and I wasn't running very well, everything kind of dried up. And in fact, I ended up like hawking myself. Like I would call coaches. This is back when we had answering machines. And I would call coaches in the middle of the night so they couldn't hang up on me. And I'd be like, my name's Kara Wheeler, and I'm from Duluth, Minnesota, and I used to be really good. And I think I could get good again someday, but I know I can help your team. And so I would like hawk myself to coaches because the only school I had ever wanted to go to was Stanford. And when I didn't make Foot Locker finals my senior year, they were just like, we're not a good fit. I was devastated. So I hawked myself to schools. I visited 5 schools. You're only allowed to visit 5, and I didn't like any of them. I liked them a little. I verbally committed to Georgetown. And then my mom said, okay, instead of a graduation present, you can pick one more school and I'll pay for you to go. And I came out to Colorado and I just fell in love with it. I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, which is northern Minnesota. It's cold, but people are outside all the time, all year round. We just go from season to season, and I just really related to the environment here, to how outdoorsy it was, but it was like so much warmer and so much sunnier. And so I came to Colorado on a 20% scholarship.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess when you make All-American, it goes to a full.
Yeah, I think I was on 20 my freshman year. My sophomore year, I got bumped up to 35. And then I got bumped up to 50, and then I got second at the national championship and finally got bumped up to a full ride for my last 2 years because I went 5 years.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, Thank goodness to see you.
Yeah, I know it's kind of funny looking back. I do sometimes give my old coach a hard time. I'm like, hello, I won like all these national titles, and I was only on a full ride the last 2 years, but it was what it was.
No, I learned, my son played golf at Arizona State, and he was sort of on a similar thing. You get a half. If you make All-American, you get a full.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep.
That gives us some incentive.
Yep.
So
I earned my way. Yeah.
So you mentioned you got your period. Was that your first, when you first, was that in your junior year in high school? Was that late?
Oh, yeah.
How did that affect you?
It affected me tremendously. I was always known as being like really short and really skinny and like just all hair. And all of a sudden, like, I gained 30 pounds, I grew 6 inches. I mean, I think in 7th grade I was 4'10. I'm 5'8" now. And all of that growth happened in my junior, senior, even into my freshman year of college. And so I didn't know the body I was in. I was like, it was very confusing. I used to just like, I mean, my mom had a freezer, an extra freezer downstairs, and it was outside of my bedroom, and it was filled with like scooters and fudgesicles, and I would eat like dozens of them while I was doing homework, and I'd just be so tiny. And my senior year, all of a sudden, like, I started to have a woman's body. If I ate 8 scooters while I was doing homework, like it showed. And so it was really hard for me to get used to the new body. I slowed down. In Minnesota, you can start running for the high school when you're in 7th grade. And my little sister, my senior year, was an 8th grader and started beating me. And so it was really horrible. And I actually felt like I was like a failure, because people would always say, you used to be so little. Like, what happened in 1 year? And I started to feel guilty, like maybe I should stop eating. I mean, it was like super confusing, but like there was no one to talk to about it, and there was no one being like, oh, your body's just getting stronger, like you're actually gonna get stronger and you're gonna be able to run so much farther and harder than you ever thought. Like there was no one saying that. So it was it was terrible. It was like a super shitty time in my life, like 2 years where if I hadn't had such good teammates and friends at my high school and then even into college, I probably would have quit running.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's, I think, one of the things that Dr. Sims talks about is that women are not small men, and that understanding the physiological change that takes place is so dramatic for women. I mean, my sisters, trust me, I went through I've lived, and it's like, wow, but it's also difficult to talk about in our current society. We don't talk about it, and I think the more dialogue that we generate, that we start to realize, hey, this is normal, this is natural, and we need to make sure that we take care of women and their proper cycle.
Yeah, and I think as a runner, especially like a good high school runner, a lot of us are these little young phenoms, right? Like we get started in 8th and 9th grade, we're winning state titles by the time we're freshmen, and I can't even begin to tell you how many women I know went through this and ended up quitting or developing like a horrible eating disorder because no one was telling us like, this is like a 2 to 3 year battle, and then you're gonna be taller, but you're also gonna be so much stronger, and you're gonna be more muscular, and all these other things are gonna happen. You just need to get through this period. And there was just no one saying that, And so for me, it was like, I just refocused my entire goals from wanting to be a national champion and wanting to do all these things to just being on the team, to just making varsity. I just like completely shifted my entire goals. I mean, I was not thinking about making the Olympics anymore or anything like that. I stopped dreaming about winning national titles, and my entire focus just became be a good teammate, make the team, make the varsity team, count for the team, score for the team. And that's what got me through it.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
And as a competitive person, that's a tough challenge to make that transition too, psychologically.
Yeah, it was tough because like you have these dreams, right? Like I'm going to go to college and I'm going to win a national title and I'm going to go on and be somebody. And all of a sudden you're like, I just want to be top 7 on my team. It's super humbling. But I was on a very good team and I liked aiding the team. And I remember like actually thinking like maybe this is just as good as it gets, but it's not what I had dreamt of, but it's better than nothing.
So the other thing that's sort of a challenge that I've heard over and over again through the course of this documentary is that the idea that when you're in college and your mileage increases and then suddenly you start stop having a normal menstrual cycle. And a lot of the misconception is that that's good, that you're actually, that signals I'm training, that means I'm doing what I should be doing, that my, my body is responding to the training, and if I miss my menstrual cycle for 6 years or 5 years or however long it is, that's actually a sign, that's a good thing. Did you experience that, or have teammates that experienced that?
Yeah, definitely teammates. I think most women, if they're being honest, will say that they dabbled with an eating disorder at some point, just because of the culture of running. I definitely did in college a little bit. And I had a mom that was like, after my senior year of school, but my junior year of eligibility, she was like, you can't go back unless you weigh over 120 pounds. And I was like, what the fuck? And I was like in my 20s, and she was like, you're not going back and finishing up. And I was the favorite to win cross country that fall, and she really was just like, this is out of control. And so I feel like really lucky, because I had this short period of sort of dabbling with it, and then got it turned around. But, I do think, like, sometimes with really hard training, you do lose your menstrual cycle, and it's a double-edged sword, because, sometimes it means you're overtraining and you're not eating enough. When I was in full-on marathon training, I would lose it for a few months, but I was running 135 miles a week. And so, but once I backed off, it would come back. So I think it was just, it's really important to know your body, to constantly be talking to your doctor, to be evaluating your bone density, testing your estrogen levels, all these levels, and making sure that you haven't gone over that edge, because it's tough. And it's tough to maintain your menstrual cycle when you're training really, really big volume. That doesn't mean it can't be done, and it doesn't mean it's not important to pay attention. But it is tough. It is challenging.
Well, you have a good handle on it, because not everybody does. That's the thing, and the loss of a cycle when the estrogen isn't in the bones and the density goes down, as you know, and even the mental side of things, when estrogen, as Stacy said, testosterone in men makes them more aggressive, makes them strong, causes this psychological change. Women, when you lose estrogen, and it affects you not just physically, but mentally as well.
Yeah, trust me, I've been through that myself, but I've definitely seen teammates over the years, over and over and over again. I see this pattern, and again, I think it's like a lack of education. Again, like losing your period doesn't mean that your training's going good and that you're gonna run well. It means something is a little too much. And so then it's like, is it too much, and is it okay because my nutrition is making up for it and I'm only gonna be holding this for a couple months? Or is it now my body's breaking down, right? And so it's a slippery slope. And I've seen, it's really sad, because I love running so much, but you really see lifelong eating disorders, and lifelong like battles with food, and just like weirdness around food long after people are done competing, and guilt around food and shame around food. And it's like, if you think about it, it's insane, because without food, your body can't perform. And it's just really sad, because countless women that I know will forever have these effects around food. And I don't know, it makes me really sad. Like, I definitely was an athlete that always was on a little bit of the heavier side, and my coaches were always asking me to lose weight. And I would always binge on M&Ms, and I still do, but I also think I'm glad, because now I'm in my 40s and I don't have any shame around food. I don't have a problem eating food. So were there times where it was horrible? My coaches were like weighing me and crazy stuff like that. Yeah, that was horrible. But I think in the long run, I'm a happier person, because I never gave up those M&Ms.
Well,
That's the best line right there.
That goes in. I'm like, I never gave those M&Ms.
I never did, yeah.
That's awesome.
You and me.
Or the Skittles.
Yeah, I'm more of a chocolate person, so yeah.
And that's a tough one, because that's I think the unique challenge of our next generation. Some of the young runners that I've been talking to, like at the pre-classic, and some of the young runners, Jessica Hall and Quigley and Carissa, and they're all so talented. You set this great stage for them, but also, things need to change and have to change as far as the education. Otherwise, they'll, you just keep repeating the same mistakes over.
Yeah,
and
and I think like, my coaches always saw my inability to diet as a weakness. But I almost made an Olympic team at 38 years old. So I feel like it was the greatest thing ever because I wasn't a flash in the pan. And that is something that I worry about for some of the women that I see, the extreme thinness that I see. I mean, I've always been worried about it, but we see these amazing performances followed by 3 or 4 years of injury. And a lot of it is due to nutrition. And a lot of time, these women think that they're doing the right thing. They're like, I'm so dedicated that I'm controlling all these things. But what they don't understand is they're cutting their careers so short by thinking they're doing the right thing, but instead it's robbing them of an extra 5, 8 years of a career. And it's really sad.
One of the athletes in this film is sort of part of the impetus to begin it. She was a runner at Richmond, shattered her femur training for the Canadian Olympic team, and her doctor said, "You're done. You can't run again. You will risk losing your leg." And that but she hid that, and it sort of she's still sort of dealing with the mental side of things. And I think that's the challenge that, because you're facing, as a woman, you're being judged harshly by your appearance.
Oh, totally.
This visual world, it's like, you don't look like Tom Brady or you don't look like Russell Wilson, and they say, well, you can't play quarterback. And it's like, I think women are judged 100 times more severely by their appearance.
It's so hard, and I mean, you wear like a little tiny bra and little tiny briefs and everything. There's no hiding if you're not at your race weight, or if if your fitness isn't there, there's no hiding it. And one thing that I was really fortunate is that I didn't have any social media in my career until the very end. I think in 2012 was the first time that I got Twitter because I had to, and that was definitely, I mean, I ran another 5, 6 years, but that was towards the end, definitely the second half of my career. And now it's very different. Instagram, Twitter, all those things were required now, usually in sponsorship contracts. The amount of posts are required. And so you're always having to go to this place where people's bodies look perfect, they look happy, their training is awesome, and it's a constant comparison game. And so I think all of the things that I had, the insecurities about what I look like on the starting line, what I look like in photos after the race, it is just tenfold now because it's just in your face every day, all the time. And it's a big challenge for athletes now.
Oh, it's so enormous. And you're right, the fitness is so incredible. And I think the perception of fitness in women's sports has changed to where, now it used to be the norm has changed. And now it's like you expect this six-pack ab and this completely cut shoulders. And, it's like, Emma Coburn body. You go, whoa, where did that come from?
Right. And like Emma Coburn is a freak of nature. Like, she's one of my absolute best friends. I was in her wedding. She literally drank Bud Light and ate cereal for a week before her wedding and didn't gain an ounce. And everyone in her wedding party, myself included, gained a shit ton of weight. And so like, she's just a freak of nature. And so it's not that that's Emma, like that's one of Emma's gifts. Like, look, she looks awesome all the time, but like comparing yourself to Emma Coburn is just unrealistic. Like, that's just one crazy thing about her. And I think like, it's just really hard. It's just this constant comparison game. And like, there's just like, I used to train with Shalane Flanagan, and Shalane Flanagan, you can just see all of the muscles, the outline of her abs. It didn't matter how much weight I lost or how much I starved myself. I never had a six-pack. And I was one of the best runners in the world. I was getting third in New York Marathon, third in Boston, second in the world in the 10,000. And I never had like defined abs. And so everybody's and like, trust me, I think I looked great, but like everyone's body's different. And so I think it is super hard now because it seems like there's this thing to point to and like, I need to look like that. But the reality is only like freaks of nature can look like that. And also, like there's downtime where off season where most people gain some weight, don't look like that. But they're not really usually posting their bodies during those times. So it's not that they're trying to be misleading, but I think it's created this whole atmosphere of we expect perfection all the time, and it's really a myth. It doesn't exist.
That is so well, God, that is so great. That's exactly right. And you're such a role model to women, young athletes today. I mean, I don't know if you realize you are, but you have really become, I think, the beacon to so many women because of your experience as a runner, and then of course your experience with the Nike Oregon project, which I want to talk about just a little bit in your own terms. But what was the high like when you won the cross country championship at Colorado? I mean, what's that high like when you win? Because running to me is so hard. Like when I played the sports that I played as a boy or a guy, and you play football, you win, you win. Losing sucks, you're pissed off, and then okay, you're on to the next game and you can kind of forget about it. But running is such a different mental challenge. What was that like when you won the cross country championship and you won the events you did at CU? I mean, that's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. That's like what I had dreamt of. I think in cross country my freshman year, I was like 160 something. My sophomore year, I was 58th. My junior year, I was 9th, and then I won my senior year. And it was a goal I had since I arrived on campus. And it was just years and years of hard work, of believing, of pushing through injuries. And so to do it, I was happy, but I wasn't even that happy. I was more relieved, honestly. It was more just like, oh my God, I got it done. I finally got it done. And I mean, the cross country title, it's an amazing title. And it's not, it's all the athletes at once. When you're at the national track meet, there's an 800 meter winner and a 1500 meter winner and a 5,000 meter winner. But in cross country, all those athletes are together and there's just one winner. So it was a huge accomplishment. I was really proud. And also, my team won that day. We were the first ever national championship team from Colorado in cross country, male or female. And now we've had a bunch of success. I think that the program's won like maybe 10 titles now, but we were the first. And so that was also just icing on the cake. My last cross-country race for Colorado, I got to win, and the team got to win, and it was great.
Pause for the espresso.
I was like, uh-oh.
Terminated.
Something's happening.
No, I forgot to unplug it. I was going to unplug it. The Marriott people have been so great to allow it. This is a good space, but
We couldn't own the whole space, so we're lucky that nobody's walked in.
Yeah, no kidding.
It will happen.
Yeah.
that's like it. There we go. Oh, that's over. Here's a break. Gosh. Hey, tell me about your career as a commentator, Kara. Because I think you're the best track commentator. I mean, I've been watching track for the last 4 years very seriously, and you're just so good at it. And I know you've got experience. Like I said, you're like Tony Romo. You like predict what's happening. I get the strategy while you're. I mean, it's like, wow, who is that? And it's like Kara Goucher. I'm like, it's so amazing. I mean, you do such a great job.
Well, thank you. I never wanted to do commentating. I never wanted to do anything with television or anything like that. I did commentating for a marathon a couple times years ago, and I didn't enjoy it. I was sitting with news anchors that were talking over me, and I just thought, oof, that's not a job for me at all. And then this spring, this winter actually, someone from NBC emailed me and said, hey, would you give me a little bit of time for a phone call? And I wrote back, for what, And she said, I'm interested in if you're doing commentating. And I wrote back, I'm really not, but I'll talk to you. So it turns out it was one of the producers high up at NBC, Rebecca Chapman, and we had a little talk, and then she was like, well, you could audition, and whatever happens, happens. So I did the audition, and I mean, I loved it. We just did races from the World Championships from 2019, and I absolutely had so much fun. And so, yeah, then I just got offered the job. And then, of course, the job was very different than doing a Zoom audition in my home. And so it was really nerve-wracking at first, and I think I've learned a lot, and I still have a ways to go. But I've always loved track and field since I was little. I've always watched all the events. I've always had my own opinions on what I think is going to happen, especially after a long personal racing career. And so it's been fun for me to be on that side of it and feel that excitement. And yeah, it's been really fun.
Well, I think that authenticity that you bring to the sport is so refreshing. I mean, that's the thing. You're like this great, fresh voice that says, "Oh, wow!" There's energy. You get a sense of what's happening during the course of a race. And there's been such an effort, like the Diamond League is changing their structure to make it more appealing to television. It's like, get better announcers, get people that know what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, I get really excited. Like, I kick my chair back when there's like a lap and a half to go, and I'm like, I'm on it. And, everyone around me is kind of laughing, but I get really into it because I mean, the races that I've gotten to call have been so amazing. I got to call the U.S. Olympic trials. I got to call the Olympics and all of the finals. And I mean, I've been in those moments and all of the work. I know all the work that's gone into it. I don't know what everyone's thinking, but I have a really good feeling that I know what they're thinking. And I don't know that will ever get old for me. Like those moments where you hear that bell, there's one lap to go, there's 4 people, 3 medals, what's going to happen, who's going to have it, who's going to lose their dream, who's going to make their dream happen. Like, I don't think the excitement of that will ever fade for me.
Well, that's, that you can't hide the passion, but you're good at it, so
Thank you.
it comes naturally. So the transition, the big tough transition from suddenly you were, as you said, a high school athlete who was just hoping to get a college offer to, an All-American, one of the greatest runners in the history of the University of Colorado, to suddenly you're at a point where now you're going to have the opportunity to become a professional runner. What was that like? How was that transition for you? That's that big transition.
Yeah.
That's huge, and not everybody gets to make, like everybody that plays basketball thinks, oh, I'm going to play in the NBA. Everyone, I made it to the University of Georgetown or North Carolina, I'm going to be in the NBA. Well, no, that doesn't happen. What was that like for you?
Yeah, the transition from college to professional was super hard for me. It was actually the hardest transition of all of my running career. At the very end of college, I got injured. I started to suffer from a lot of mental pressure. My senior year, I was the defending champion in the 5,000. I had the fastest time in the country, and I can't even tell you what place I got. I actually don't know. I was leading, and I had a panic attack. And so I really struggled. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be all these things, but it really got so big, right? I'm just like a girl from Duluth, Minnesota that ate 1 million fudgesicles a day and ate Spam and stuff. I'm not from genetically freak parents who knew how to train me, or I just started to overthink everything. I don't really deserve to be here. I'm not really that good, And so I just really started to have a problem with the pressure. I was so lucky, no one wanted to be my agent. It was a little bit like going to college all over again, where nobody approached me to be my agent. I sat down with my coach, Mark Wetmore at the time, and we just started reaching out to shoe companies. I mean, it was crazy. And then Nike invited me to come visit their campus. And they knew that Adam, my now husband, we weren't married quite yet, but they knew that we were engaged, and they had lost Adam in a bidding war, basically, when Adam came out of college. And I know that a lot of the reason why they courted me was they were hoping that they would get Adam out of it eventually, which they did. But I went and visited Nike, and I was just, blown away. I mean, this is my dream, right? I grew up wearing Nikes and all that kind of stuff. And so when the offer came in, there was no second guessing it. I just signed it. But I signed it in June of 2001, and then I was really injured for 3.5, 4 years. So I barely raced those first few years. I raced only 2 or 3 times a year. I kept getting a femoral stress fracture. I started to really question my life choices, because I had been a psychology major and I had won a scholarship to go to grad school. And I started to question my life choices. I literally cross-train all day and watch daytime television, and I could have been somebody. I could have furthered my education, and maybe I could have been a doctor. And so I started question what am I doing with my life? But I was married to Adam, who was running pretty well during that time and making teams, and so I was still around the sport and trying, but I was definitely depressed and questioning my life choices.
So depression is something that everybody has talked about. It's like there's not a single athlete that I've talked to for this film that hasn't had some issue with depression and either had to, and it doesn't, it's not something you want to tell people because people treat depression as a weakness or
Right.
failure.
Mm-hmm.
And like, trust me, my youngest son is on Zoloft and all kinds of stuff. It's like he had, significant help that needs to come. So what was that like for you? Was there help? Because the impression is that Nike, this is the greatest company in the world.
Yeah.
And what is that? They should provide. They should have the best of everything, the best resources, the best of everything. And then the reality is that they don't.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my impression.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Take a minute.
1 second.
You want to just pause, Dave? Let's pause.
Okay.
Sip